As we've been going through old boxes preparing for this move, I've come across a lot of old papers. And one of the papers I found was a letter my dad had written to us kids just before he was to have brain surgery to remove a tumor. This was in 1996. My dad was 38 at the time. I was 10, with brothers aged 12, 14, and 16. My dad was hopeful the surgery would be successful and he would be able to resume life as he knew it, but he knew that this kind of operation carries significant risk. He would be put under, and when he awoke, if he awoke, he wasn't sure if he would still be able to talk, be able to remember, be able to use his legs, drive a car, those many abilities that are all too easy to take for granted. So in case he didn't wake up, or did wake up but in a way that was unrecognizable to us, he wanted to leave us with a parting message. So he wrote this letter. He wrote, "The most important thing that I've learned about life is this: a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, and obedience to God in how you live your life. Everything else about life is just the details." He wrote, "If I am gone from you or cannot be talked with for any reason and you face something that you are not sure of, remember what I've just said. Just live out those two things: a relationship with God through Jesus Christ and obedience to God in how you live your life." Well, thankfully, my dad was able to wake up from the surgery and be his usual self, although with some significant side effects like facial paralysis and deafness in one ear. But still, his memories, his personality, his abilities were all intact. His parting words to us didn't have to be his parting words. But rereading that letter made me think about what legacy we each want to leave behind. What message, what words would we choose if we were parting with people? If we could only tell them one thing, what would it be? Now, I'm not about to have major surgery, so this is a final message of sorts, but it's obviously not as heavy. I'm about to move a couple counties away, and God willing, we will remain in relationship with each other. Of course, with the right boundaries, as we open up space in our hearts for Katie, our new Director of Adult Discipleship, and for the ministry she'll be part of here. But still, today is an occasion for leaving you with parting words. Today is an opportunity to go back to the main thing. If I could tell my church family here just one last thing, what would it be? Would it be, "I'm sorry"? Well, I am sorry for a lot of things. One of which is a sermon I preached back in April of 2016. I made the mistake of rereading this sermon recently, and if you've ever given a presentation at work and gone back a few years later and reread it, or if you've ever listened to your voice on a recording, you know what a terrible idea this is. But I did. I went back and reread that sermon because I wanted to see if it was as bad as I remembered. It was worse. It was one of those sermons that came from a place of anger about what was going on in U.S. politics at the time. And I chose to vent that anger in the sermon, which really wasn't fair to all of you listening. Sermons are often like monologues, not dialogues. They're monologues that everyone is just kind enough not to interrupt. And so the person who gets to speak uninterrupted has a lot of power. You give us power in these moments. And I abused that power. I'm sorry. That's one thing I want to tell you. But it's not the main thing. What would my parting message be? Would it be thank you? Well, I am thankful. 5 years ago when I started this job, I was still living in Durham, 80 minutes away. And I could have done the commute, work 8 hours in Pinehurst and spend 3 hours on the road up and back in the same day. But instead, the people of this church took me in. You let me spend the night in your homes. The Oakses, the Moores, the Wellses, the Baldwins, the Magno Mutarelli duo, June Davidson, they all made up a bed for me and fed me breakfast in the morning. And what that did for me was show me the diversity of people here at PUMC. Military and civilian and Peace Corps, Republican and Democrat and Libertarian, people who grew up comfortable and people who grew up hardscrabble. There was no way to typify who you are as a church because everyone was so different. But the one thing you all had in common was your hospitality. I'll never forget one of those overnights when I was sitting with Lee Moore after the spaghetti plates had been cleared away, and he asked where I stood on gay rights. We were sitting at their kitchen table, surrounded by pictures of their grandchildren, and I was just about to head upstairs to their guest bedroom to read some of their back issues of Our State and fall asleep. But before I could, we got onto the topic of gay rights. And then that topic led us into talking about abortion, of all things. The thing I won't forget is that Lee asked me for my thoughts and then really listened. Really listened with an open heart. And when he shared his thoughts, I hope I did the same. There we were, a brother and sister in Christ, trying to be faithful in this complex world. And we weren't just doing this PUMC thing in a church. No, church was out in the home. If anyone listening to this sermon today is actually a visitor to PUMC, then I want to let you know what you're in for. One of our core values is hospitality. And by core values, we mean what is integral to our DNA from the founding of this church onward? What is built into our bones here? Hospitality is the marrow of our bones. Hospitality is at our core. So I hope if you're a newcomer that you'll stick around and get to glimpse some of the warmth so many of us have received here, where church is not just in a formal building, it's the homes people will open to you. It's the hearts people will open. So I say thank you. Thank you for your hospitality. But I don't want us to be the type of church that only gives hospitality. I want us to receive it, to open ourselves to receive it. I think that's part of the beauty in the story we read this morning when Jesus sent his friends out to the towns and villages to stay with host families. They had something to give, sure. They had a message to give. They had a healing to give, but they had to receive too. That was part of the deal. They had to rely on someone else to make them breakfast in the morning. So I wonder if God is calling us in a similar way. We who are so used to being the host or hostess. We who are used to housing members of the African Children's Choir in our homes. That's actually a good example. Those are kids who have stepped out of their culture and entered into the culture of another. And that makes me wonder, could we be called to step out of our own culture and into the culture of another, to learn to speak the language of another? Where might God want us to be a little uncomfortable and rely on others? One of the greatest signs of hospitality here at PUMC is every December when dozens and dozens of us sign our name on that bulletin board out in the lobby so we can host that enormous Christmas Eve service in the Fair Barn. I mean, it's huge. It offers worship for thousands of strangers who might not otherwise set foot in a church. But I wonder, where are the places in our community we wouldn't otherwise set foot in? Can we go to those neighborhoods? Can we go to those corners of the county where we would be the stranger and would rely on someone else to let us in? I just want to offer that challenge to all of us as we move forward as a church. And I want to thank you for challenging me to not only give that openness, but to be on the receiving end. Thank you. I'm sorry, and thank you. Two very important messages I'd want to leave you with. But even they aren't the main thing. For my final message, serving as one of the pastors at PUMC, I can only go back to the most important thing I've learned about life, which is this: a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, and obedience to God and how you live out your life. Everything else about life is just the details. But I wish that for you, for anyone listening to this sermon right now, for everyone, that freedom that comes from a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. It is the ultimate, triumphant, unequivocal main thing. With Jesus, we're able to say, I'm sorry, and not have to live bogged down by the thing we're sorry for. There is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Isn't that good news? So we can listen again to the foolish thing we said back in April of 2016. We can look at the relationship we damaged in July of 2018. We can remember the years we wasted being so focused on self, and somehow we don't have condemnations. We have love. God proves his love for us in this: Christ died for us while we were yet sinners. God's coming to us in Christ is an invitation to leave behind all that we regret and enter into the life of God. Talk about hospitality, but we are not the hosts. We simply receive it. We are welcomed into the house of God. We are welcomed home. And sure, maybe once we get there, we do say, I'm sorry. But that will never be the final thing we say. The final thing we say is and can only ever be, thank you. Thanks be to God. Amen.